This is Plant-Based Briefing, 11 tips for beginners to replace eggs with more nutritious whole foods alternatives with suggested recipes. Part 1 by Brigitte Gemme at veganfamilykitchen.com. I'm Marian Erickson. This is the Plant-Based podcast where I curate and narrate with permission a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And today's article is longer than that, so it's a two-parter. I'll read part 1 today and then tune back in tomorrow for the second half. And now let's get to today's Plant-Based Briefing. 11 tips for beginners to replace eggs with more nutritious whole foods alternatives with suggested recipes. Part 1 by Brigitte Gemme at veganfamilykitchen.com. Replace eggs? What do you mean? My egg-loving self from 10 years ago would not believe I would ever willingly stop eating eggs. To me, eggs were the perfect food, such a convenient package of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. I would batch prep a dozen hard-boiled eggs for myself on the weekend to peel one for snack mid-morning and sometimes mid-afternoon, too. During my second pregnancy, they were one of the only things I could eat that eased the nausea. In my plant-based and vegan journey, eggs were probably the last animal product I held on to. But let's face it, they had to go. In this post, I will share my best tips about how to replace eggs in cooking in both egg-centric dishes like omelets and in those recipes where they play a supporting role like baking. The best part is that eggs can be substituted with whole food ingredients that are far more nutritious and undoubtedly health-promoting. Why quit eggs? Eggs do contain macronutrients, but the devil is in the details. I recommend reading Dr. Shireen Kassem's excellent summary on the health implications of consuming eggs, called Eating Eggs. In short, although eggs may be better for health compared to a bacon sandwich with white bread, we can make healthier and safer choices by eating plant sources of the same nutrients. For example, an 80-gram serving of tofu has 6 grams of protein and contains choline, selenium, and iron, whilst being very low in saturated fat and containing no cholesterol. Substituting plant protein, for example beans and bean products such as tofu, for egg protein has been singled out as a longevity booster in the massive NIH AARP Diet and Health Study. In particular, the lower overall mortality was attributable primarily to substitution of plant protein for egg protein, a 24% lower risk in men and 21% lower risk in women. Between no food and eggs of course are preferable. Without surprise, eggs can prevent stunting of children in contexts of extreme poverty. However, in North America and Europe, egg alternatives are abundant, inexpensive, cruelty-free, salmonella-free, and more nutritious. We'd be silly not to make the switch. Eggs are cruel. Battery cages still confine 80% of the world's approximately 8 billion layer hens, leaving them each with less than the surface of a letter-sized piece of paper to live their whole miserable lives. Even those hens lucky enough to toil in so-called cage-free environments are in practice confined to hell on earth. What about idyllic backyards where a few hens roam free in the day, retreating to a safe shed to roost at night? I'm sorry to report that hatcheries destroy the laying hen's brothers or would-be roosters by live grinding or suffocation, since they have no commercial value. Buying laying hens, or their eggs, makes one a participant in this horrific practice that, as far as I know, only Germany has banned so far. Anyone who has had a period knows that they can make us feel depleted. Laying hens have been selectively bred to lay a high number of eggs, basically having a period every day. The process takes their health and robs them of the nutrients they need to live a long, healthy life. In short, hens are females whose reproductive organs are hijacked by human industry to create cheap protein for humans, without consideration for the hens themselves. Psst. If you want to keep a rescued layer hen as a pet for their personality, consider providing them with a laying control implant. See details linked here. What about commercial alternatives? Egg replacer powder has been around forever. Vegan mayo is common in convenience stores, and even liquid eggs are now available on supermarket shelves in most metropolitan areas. The myriad of commercial options in both the United States and Canada means that there isn't an egg need that isn't covered with a suitable substitute. Replacing eggs has big business potential, and there's no shortage of players in this field. If you are just getting started with vegan cooking and too overwhelmed to transition to whole foods alternatives for now, don't worry about it. Bookmark this page and come back later. But if you have the mental bandwidth to consider transforming your cooking and free your kitchen from eggs, you will love these tips. Number 1, think about what you want to replace when replacing eggs. The first step to substituting eggs is to think about their purpose in your meal. Do you feel like making a dish where eggs can be seen and tasted like, well, eggs? Fried, poached, scrambled, hard-boiled, like omelets, quiches, etc.? Let's call those eggy recipes. Or are you relying on the chemical properties of eggs like leavening and binding in order to create a dish where the eggs themselves will not be visible or tasted? There's also a third category, that of the habitual egg dish. Those are dishes where you might have been adding an egg out of habit, but where really it wasn't necessary to begin with. 2 examples come to mind, banana bread and the filling of spring rolls. Number 2, for eggy things, get yourself some black salt, aka kalanamak. Craving an omelet or scrambled eggs? You'll first want to take a trip to the Indian grocer. Buy yourself a package of black salt, aka kalanamak, keeping in mind it is actually pink. Black salt is actually just sodium chloride, or salt, that happens to be contained with a small amount of sulfur. Since the smell of sulfur is very specific to cooked eggs, adding a pinch of black salt to eggy dishes can fool our brains. If it smells like eggs, it must be eggs. Don't buy a big bag. You will only use at most a 1/4 teaspoon at a time. Also, it tends to lose its sulfurous smell after a while, so you'll want to get fresh black salt in a year anyway. 3. English muffin sandwiches and Benedicts? Firm tofu wins the day. Cut firm tofu into 1/2-inch slabs and press lightly with a clean towel to remove excess water. Use a wide-mouthed jar lid or small bowl to punch out a round shape if you feel the need to more closely imitate eggs. Fry in a skillet on both sides. Oil is optional, but adding a teaspoon of it will help reproduce the egg experience because eggs are more fat than tofu. Sprinkle with a big pinch of black salt and fresh ground pepper. Layer between the top and bottom of a toasted English muffin with your favorite vegan cheese and vegan bacon for that drive-through breakfast vibe. I love Diane's Kitchen's cheesy sandwich recipe below, and the Viet Vegans recipe is a very convincing Egg McMuffin imitation linked here. You just listened to 11 tips for beginners to replace eggs with more nutritious whole foods alternatives with suggested recipes. Part 1 by Brigitte Gemme at veganfamilykitchen.com. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. Tune in tomorrow for the second half of this episode, where you'll hear great tips about how to make egg-free omelets, scrambled eggs, egg salad, mayo, how to replace eggs in baking, and how to make fancy white cakes, meringues, and soufflés. So tune in tomorrow, and please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.